Bingo, we're back. It's 12 o'clock rock at 12:30. That's the way it goes. And we are here on Mina, Marco, and me on Monday. Our opening show today, talking about energy, talking about all the things that are happening, and plenty of things are either happening or about to happen. Mina, welcome to the show. Mina Morita, the former chair of the PUC, now energy consultant.
Good afternoon.
Great. And Marco, Provision Solar in Hilo, both joining us by Skype audio. Marco, say hi.
I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore, Toto.
Toto. We've seen Toto in the in the newspaper lately. We've seen that.
Without Toto as our faithful guide dog in trying to make our way through these difficult and challenging energy times, Jay, without Toto, we would truly be lost.
Well, we're going to be in better shape, aren't we? Tomorrow, Tuesday, for VERGE at the Hawaiian Hilton Village. It's a big deal. It's the first time VERGE has done one of these energy conferences in Hawaii. They're a big company, lots of energy conferences, lots of experience, lots of clout. So what do you guys know about that? I know, Mina, for example, you're in one of the panels. So what do you expect is going to happen, what is it, tomorrow and Wednesday?
Well, I haven't, I'm really sorry, I haven't been paying much attention to this. But I guess, the challenge is how do we get to 100%? And so my understanding is we have all these experts coming in to tell us how we can get there.
Yep. Well, we have some local experts too, like your own self. So can you give us a précis about what you're going to say?
Well, I think I'm just there for colorful commentary.
we know how that works with you, Mina.
They basically told me I didn't have to prepare, and they want the discussion to be spontaneous. So I don't know what to expect.
Okay, that's going to be interesting. I'll be there watching you.
All right.
What about you, Marco? What's your connection with VERGE?
I've decided to go VERGE less this time, Jay. I'm going to watch from my overhead view here in beautiful downtown Hilo.
I've heard they're going to broadcast a stream. They're going to stream some of the speeches. I haven't had confirmation of that, but that's what I've heard most recently. So if you play it, you might be able to see some of that on your computer, even. Yeah.
Well, one of the things I'm going to be keeping an eye on, Jay, is again how I think short thrift the transportation sector is getting in terms of, there's been a lot of hoopla since the governor signed the commitment to become 100% renewable in power generation in 29 years from now, but far too little discussion regarding transportation. So I did some digging past day or so, and I went to the DBED website and found really their very, very useful report, which they do from time to time on Hawaii energy scene, and this one is dated just last month, so it's about as fresh as it can get. And one of the things that just leaped out to me is that if you look at all the petroleum that was imported or is imported into the state to power its economy, why don't you take a guess as to the percentage of that petroleum that goes to energy production, to power production, electricity production? I'd like to hear your guess.
I give up. Mina?
How much? I'm sorry, what was the?
Sorry, of all the petroleum, of all the oil that is brought into the state, what percentage of that oil is used to generate electricity?
30%. 30%.
No.
Well, you're pretty darn close. It's 28%. 28%, which means that 72% of all the oil brought into the state these days is used for something other than electricity production, and that is by far transportation. 28% goes to ground transportation, 27% goes to commercial aviation, 6% to marine transport, 8% for military, and 3% for other. So what the takeaway here is that 72% of all the oil brought into the state of Hawaii goes for transportation. Virtually all of it goes for transportation. So it's all well and good to make progress, as we should, in reducing oil going to produce electricity. But what in the world can we do? What should we do? What must we do to reduce the state's heavy dependence on oil for transportation?
This is a classic MBA question, or maybe a political science question, because what you have is people are wedded to their cars. What did I see in this morning's paper is car sales are up in Hawaii. More people are spending more money on more cars, and most of those cars, great, 99% of them are fossil fuel cars. And we as a group of consumers are oblivious, to the need to get off fossil fuel. We are buying fossil fuel cars faster now than we were before. So what you have is, ingrained consumer habits, and we have to change those habits. And how do you do that? Well, you have to do it through governmental action, I'm sorry to say. You have to do either incentive or disincentive to make people get off fossil fuel cars. It's not so much that the auto dealers are not selling electrics, but the demand for electrics is fairly minor. And the demand is for those big SUVs that gobble gas. What are we going to do?
So one of the biggest problems about challenges in the transportation market is our fuel infrastructure, because, as we well know, when the refineries were built more than 50 years ago, it was how to eke out the most out of a barrel of oil, right? And with the products that would be used in Hawaii. So what would be the most efficient product mix from that barrel of oil? But now that we've affected the electricity sector by changing, the fuel mix, we're also affecting the efficiency of the refineries. And what's really interesting here is, we have a refinery that was just recently purchased, and we have another refinery that is about to be purchased. And, we're talking about two old refineries that need major investment. And so what does that future look like for these refineries? And then another problem here is the refineries control the pipeline, the fuel pipeline into our state. So how can we have a different fuel mix, a different more competition in the fuels market when we technically have a duopoly here that controls not only the pipeline but most of the storage?
Well, if I was king, someday I hope I'd be able to accede to that job. I would say we're gonna tax gas very heavily, really heavily, and we're going to apply that in some way to clean energy. At the same time, we're going to give incentives for electric cars. We're going to resume the tax incentives, for example, and we're going to give all these parking breaks and lane privilege breaks, and we're going to put electric cars all over the highways. We're going to be number one in the country on electric cars. And then we'll change, the source of energy for those cars to be from other than fossil fuel. And that's the way I would do it. What do you guys think about that? Why don't we just bring the government in to change public conduct?
Well, there have been tax credits, federal and state, if I'm not mistaken, to encourage high efficiency, well, in this case, electric vehicles. But let's just look at some of the stats. There are about 1.1 million vehicles on Hawaii roads as of now, more or less, 1.1 million.
It's almost one for every man, woman, and child in the state. Even the 3-year-olds have a vehicle,
Yeah. And out of those 1.1 million vehicles or so, about 4,000 of them, a little bit more than 4,000, are electric vehicles. That comes out to 0.004 of 1%. 0.004 of 1%. Hybrids are better in that they're about somewhere in 21,000 range, and they're 0.02 of 1%. So how is it that you get people to go for something other than gasoline-driven cars? Well, I mean, mass transit is something that's been discussed over the decades. We've got to get more people in mass transit. Well, you look at what I'll call the HRT fiasco going on Oahu these days. That certainly doesn't lend to getting much enthusiasm for more mass transit. And here on this island, since we're such a big island, literally, being able to get people around on buses is always going to be a challenge. So, to me...
But buses are really a great solution, though, Marco, because you can move the routes anytime you want, because they have been successful when they have been deployed in adequate numbers and schedules. We do have a pretty good bus system in Oahu. Problem is, we have to wean people off cars into the buses. And the way you do that, among other incentives, is you make the bus system even better. You make it everywhere, ubiquitous, buses everywhere. And we could do that, but we don't do that because people like to drive their cars. We have to disincentivize the cars first. And no politician wants to do that because it's going to be very unpopular. And he likes to drive too. But I think, taking it all together, you guys, we're on the road to nowhere with this. We're going to wind up on a brick wall with everybody driving fossil fuel cars. It hasn't really changed.
Well, I think we have to face some reality here. What we got is a math problem, because as we seek to increase the number of electric cars on the road, the denominator is also increasing. So, given it's old cars don't go away; they stick around. They get passed down. Hence, so.
You know what happens in Singapore? If your car is more than X years old, the tax goes astronomical. You can't keep a car beyond X years old, so everybody is incentivized or de-incentivized so that they get rid of their old cars. We can and should do that here. There are no constitutional questions about it. We could change the way the highways are used. We could change what is driving on the highways. The state has really unlimited authority to do this. And I just don't understand why nobody takes any steps. No politician running today is out there telling you that we have to, incentivize electric cars. I don't think it's a part of anybody's platform. And that's really too bad.
No, I think, Marco brings up a good point. The issue is, how do we deal with the transportation sector? And the transportation sector is going to have to take multiple steps at the same time. It's good planning. It starts with good planning, where as we plan for multimodal options. We have to be building walkable, bikeable types of communities to minimize the need for cars, and then we have to again have public transportation options available. We have to look at taxation issues. Our road taxes are pretty cheap, so it's tackling this from all kinds of different angles, and it's a long-term commitment.
Well, that's true, Mina, but what do you do today? What do you do today? What's step one?
I think right now, it's first acknowledging that this is going to be a challenge. And also with the transportation sector, it's more of a free market. At least in the electricity side, you have regulated entities responsible for achieving the mandate set by the state. But on the especially the vehicle side, the transportation side, it's more of a market approach.
Well, I think we've been counting on the free market a long time, and since I came to these islands, the number of car dealers has proliferated, the number of cars on the road. As you say, Mina, they don't go away, they hang around, and their useful lives are way beyond what you would expect. And so we have 1.1 out of 1.4 million people are represented by cars. And the result, of course, is incredible congestion. We can't keep up with fixing the highways. We aren't making new highways. We aren't making new traffic facilities. And we're using fossil fuel. We have got to take draconian steps. So, Marco, what do you think those steps should be?
I think one or more champions need to come forward on multiple for multiple fields, including our own government on the county and state level, and individuals who feel that this is going to be their calling for the months and years to come, and willing to take the heat. And I don't see anybody out there right now in terms of transportation as much as I would like to see somebody. And folks like Hank Rogers and others who are committed to trying to make a difference here and have been trying to make a difference, a positive difference for years and years. I think it's going to take a number of individuals who are willing to put themselves out there, amongst other things.
Yeah, it's so interesting. We have so many people who oppose rail and who have opposed, like Cliff Slater, from way back when. But no group, no nonprofit or cause organization has stepped forward to actually try to do something about the highways and fossil fuel cars. It's really, we're going to suffer. And I think only out of that suffering will emerge some political will. But right now, I would say to you guys, there is no political will. Although, Mina, as you say, we have to recognize the challenge. And I think a lot of people do recognize the challenge, but they're not in pain over it. We have to wait for the pain to come. And through the pain, there will be resolution.
Well, I'm feeling the pain on Kauai when I have to drive through either Lehui or Kapa at certain times of the day. It's crazy.
I thought Kauai was a country town. I thought Kauai was a country town.
No, it's when you're driving through Kapa'a, everything merges right into the town, and it takes probably about 15, 20 minutes to drive, maybe a mile and a half?
I think you bring up a good point. It's not just Oahu that's congested. It's not just Oahu who has failed, to build the infrastructure to keep current with the traffic and the vehicles. It's all the islands. We have not attended to this issue. We like our cars, we love our cars, but we don't attend to the infrastructure.
In Hanalei, there's a backup at Hanalei Bridge around after school lets out, and as tourists are returning from the beach and going back to their hotel room. I mean, there can be as many as 30 cars waiting to cross the bridge because it's a one-lane bridge.
Yeah, we have to do something. But for the moment, let's move on to solar. Let's move on to what's happening in solar. There's interesting national trends which are actually happening in Hawaii too. You want to go on that, Marco?
I'd be happy to, Jay. Just to wrap up the transportation thing, just one thing I wanted to add on a positive note, which is that being the small population state that we are, we rank second in the nation behind California in the number of EVs registered in our state. So that is something to be proud of, and got to start somewhere. It's not going to happen overnight in terms of dramatic transportation and the dramatic change in the transportation sector. So as far as solar goes, there was an interesting piece by the Star Advertiser energy beat writer Katie Mickleseth yesterday, where she was looking at the residential solar lease option or phenomenon, which has led to a number of mainland companies, including Solar City, Sunrun, Vivint Solar, amongst others, doing very, very, very good business here in Hawaii over the past 4 or 5 years. And one of her points in the piece being that as energy costs, as electricity costs have gone down because of the price of oil on the world market being in the $40 or $30 range, $30 a barrel range for these past months, that it has made the solar lease less attractive in terms of savings to the homeowner. So I thought that was kind of interesting, because this model of kind of quasi ownership or being able to lease a PV system and have it be on your roof for X number of years, that has been very, very successful here. But it seems that the solar lease business, at least as far as residential, is morphing into perhaps more of a longer term loan possibility. And I know Mina's been looking at that as well. So be interested to hear what she has to say on it.
Yeah, Mina, what do you think? Things are changing, eh?
Well, I think, what we have to recognize, the way that the article was written, it made it look like it was just a Hawaii phenomena or a Hawaii trend. But this is actually happening nationwide, and it's been noted over a year ago. And part of it is oil prices, lower oil prices, lower interest rates, the uncertainty of net metering programs. All of these factors are affecting that particular financing model. But I think overall, what should be recognized is that the solar industry itself, and maybe Marco can speak more to this, the business model of the solar industry itself is changing. And so these companies that offer third-party leases, they may have saturated the market for that type of financing, and they have to look towards other business models. I think in Hawaii, the situation is a little bit more unique because, we are an island system, and we're up against, we're reaching our capacity limit for midday generation. And unless something happens dramatically on the storage side, rooftop solar is going to be affected one way or the other. So, part of it is, this isn't solely a Hawaii phenomena, but something that is happening nationwide.
Yeah, well, and as you say, it has a lot to do with oil prices. Those spreadsheets don't work so well. I mean, what did John Cole, your former colleague on the PUC, former commissioner, there was a centerpiece in that story, and the amount of money that he's saving on his lease arrangement for solar 34 panels on his roof, as I recall, is way less than it was at the beginning, simply because the price of electricity from the utility has gone down. So the spreadsheet doesn't look the same anymore. You were also in this story, right, Marco. I hope you noticed that.
There was a mention of my sales and marketing manager. Yes, I wanted to put in one positive note that's just kind of recently come to my attention, which is that Maui Electric Company has successfully installed this several megawatt state-of-the-art battery at the Molokai power plant. It's in a 45-foot container. It's an exotic sounding battery technology that I hadn't even heard of before. In fact, I can't recall what it is exactly. It's lithium something. And they received it, MECO received it as essentially a freebie, if I'm not mistaken, from HNEI, Hawaii Natural Energy Institute, which got some grant money from Department of Defense. And that system is now being tested by Maui Electric on Molokai, and it's allowing, so far so good, it's allowing making for greater frequency stability for that very small island grid, and preliminarily, one of the ancillary benefits, although it wasn't designed to do this, is that it can act as a load when there is essentially surplus PV power during midday hours, when there is a maximum PV generation and a lower amount of consumption because people are not at home using as much power. So we're beginning to see in our state these new technologies of being able to store power and mitigate surplus PV power from doing possible damage to the grid or causing the grid to be more unstable. So I think that's kudos to Maui Electric for moving forward on that. And like I said, the preliminary test results are quite positive. So hopefully this will be the beginning of more such projects to come.
Well, we started out with looking at the technology of PVs themselves, the cells, then the inverters, and then we started looking at the technology of batteries. Then we started looking at the technology of software. And so, I mean, the utility of photovoltaic and its efficiency and usefulness in the grid, it's all a matter of advancing technologies on all of these things. You were saying, Mina.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out the work that's going on with the Hawaii Natural Energy Institute. They have a variety of different types of batteries that are situated in different areas. My understanding is that there's also another container of a battery at Hawaii on the Big Island attached to a wind project.
That's correct.
There's all these different technologies that they're testing out as to not only function, but the number of cycles that are being run through these batteries and the life of these batteries. These are really important studies going on right now.
I think we're going to see some of that at VERGE. I mean, there are a number of people involved in, the sort of the triad of the grid, batteries, and software, and making them all work together. And as you said before, Mina, this is not limited to Hawaii. In fact, most of this is happening on the mainland, and where before we might have thought that we were ahead of the game by, the number of installations and all that. The reality now is that there's technology being developed on the mainland in all these areas which are learning about photovoltaic and the integration of photovoltaic with the grid that we ought to watch, we ought to look at. And one of them I mentioned to you guys before the show appeared in today's MIT technology newsletter, which is all about a technology that will allow the establishment of a mini grid among consumers, having nothing to do directly with the utility, where the consumers strap their photovoltaic systems together and share in their storage capacity and their generation capacity as a group. And I think that that's being rolled out in places on the mainland, and that could be very useful for us here in Hawaii. Well, let's close now. We're out of time, so why don't you guys make your final statements real quick, and we'll close.
Is it ladies first?
Ladies first, Mina.
I just, my latest blog, I write about, how we're moving from economies of scale to economies of network. And what you just described, Jay, is how do we develop these different networks, and then the grid serves to interconnect all of these networks. So a lot of exciting stuff going on.
You bet, and we're going to see some of that at VERGE. Marco, take 30 seconds and close, will you?
I will opine that I feel it in my bones. That we will have a decision from the Commission, Public Utilities Commission, on the proposed merger between HEI and Nextera very, very soon. Okay, well, look, you guys, when that happens, if it happens before our next show, which is being 2 weeks from today, let's do a special show just to take comment on that. I would really like to do that with you. And hopefully it will be within 2 weeks. That's Marco Mangelsdorf, Mina Morita, in Mina, Marco, and me on Monday. Thank you so much, you guys. I'll see you over the rainbow.
Over the rainbow. Aloha.